Hello and welcome to Take Time. I am your host, Patrick Marlette, and let's talk about the Hamilton Khaki Aviation Pilot. It is a pretty straightforward name for a watch that is in fact an aviator, and it's true to form, that's for sure. The one I have in front of me is not the 42mm version, but the 45mm version. They say 45 on the website, but I'm actually getting 46. The watch is a little bit bigger than they're letting on. And as a matter of fact, while we're looking at it, why don't we go ahead and take in those dimensions. So it is 46 millimeters in width, excluding the crown guard and the crown, of course. It is 53 millimeters from lug to lug. We've got a 22 millimeter lug width and a 12.5 thickness. Now, before I prattle on, I would like to thank John again. Dude, you really came in there. You number one subscriber. John, thank you so much for lending me your timepieces to review on the show. It means a lot that you trust me enough to do so. And I'm just hyper appreciative because I'm getting to test stuff that I, wouldn't have purchased or wouldn't have gotten an opportunity to try out otherwise. So thank you so much. Also, I'd like to say, I never saw Interstellar, but I know that the 42mm version was used in that film. And this style, this aesthetic of these Hamilton pilots was extremely appealing to me. I almost actually got one of those 42s, so testing out its bigger brother is an awesome experience. Now, before we go on to the review, I'd like you guys to know that with all of my reviews here on the channel, I like to start with the bad and then move on to the good before giving my final opinion of a timepiece. Now, never did I ever imagine myself joining the Big Watch Club, and let me preface this review by stating that I don't typically indulge in larger timepieces. 42 millimeters might be the largest width I've ever gone with 50 millimeters from lug to lug being the longest. And I have to say that this watch was actually a welcome surprise. Again, this is not a timepiece I would ever typically think of purchasing for myself because it is a tad on the large side. And, with good reason. It's a pilot watch, so it only makes sense that it would traditionally be fashioned in a larger case. And I really love this watch conceptually. I love the execution of it, but it does not go without at least a few bad notes. So the first bad note I'd like to mention, and as I've already stated, it is a larger watch, is that this is not going to be for everyone. I actually personally like how it wears on my 7¼ inch wrist. It actually wears very well, but again, the scale of this particular model is not going to be for everyone. And people look at this one a little bit more desirably than the 42mm version because it boasts a 20-meter water resistance rating with a screw-down crown, whereas the smaller variant of this watch doesn't. So I can see why people were considering this more over that one. Do note you won't get that with the 42mm version. However, you do have to upgrade to a larger case to get that benefit. So it is a little bit of an annoyance. It would be really nice. And again, it's a pilot watch, so water resistance isn't the utmost concern. It stinks if you were trying to pick up this watch for the practicality of the 46 and the style, but didn't want the scale of it. So it's a minor bad note. But again, guys, we're looking at a pilot watch here. It's in the aviation collection on Hamilton's website. Water resistance shouldn't be of the utmost concern for you. No Flieger should be that water resistant, but it is. So it's actually just a big benefit. So that is a good note in and of itself, but it is a bad note that for those of you that want the more modest size, you can't find it unless you buy this one for that water resistance rating. Now, before I carry on with the review, I do want to look at the bracelet. Now, unfortunately, John and I don't share the exact wrist size. His wrist, or rather, he at least wears his bracelets a little bit smaller than I do, so I couldn't use the bracelet on this timepiece, so I can't speak to the wearability of this bracelet, but I will say that if there were more micro adjustments, there's only two here. There'll likely be another link or enough links for me to size this on my own wrist. And I also borrowed a Seiko Samurai from John, and that one had a whole bunch of micro adjustments. I was able to get that to fit my wrist. 2 micro adjustments is not enough, guys. I'm going to say this here on the channel for anyone else. The industry should set a standard. If you're going to make a bracelet, you should put micro adjustments on it. It lends to the wearability of your watch, And the wearability is probably the number one experience when engaging a watch, unless it's a piece of art that deserves to be in a museum. If you're wearing a watch for all intents and purposes, a bracelet that fits your wrist nicely is essential. The fact that I couldn't wear this is sort of a downer. Honestly, guys, you've got so much real estate there. Let's add a few more micro adjustments so that people like me with slightly larger wrist can get to wear a nice bracelet. Otherwise, it's machined very well. I mean, the end links are really great. They fit the case solidly. There's no wiggle room. Again, you have a fully machined clasp. It's all really great. I like the overall aesthetic of the bracelet. It is oyster link style, so it's a little boring, it's a little tired, but it's tried and true. Every group uses the oyster bracelet these days, so why not? Now, before I carry on with the review, guys, I want you to know that the average pricing on this particular model is about $360 to $400, depending on where you're buying it from, the bracelet variation that is. So that's a pretty decent price for what you're getting. Inside the heart of this watch beats the Hamilton Caliber H30, which is just a fancy way of saying ETA 2836-2, and you can actually make out that movement on the case back. I actually quite like that it features an exhibition case back, but the top end of this watch is sapphire crystal, and I do believe that the exhibition case back also features sapphire crystal. And you can see all the stats and fun specifics of the watch on the back end here. Of course, it's stainless steel in its construction. It's screwed in by bolts, which is really interesting. It should be practical enough for most people to get into should you want to fool with this or try to regulate it yourself. But again, I don't know how those H30s work. I'm sure someone will, though. And I do love, actually, while we're looking at it, I do like this exhibition case back. I actually haven't taken it in that much since I've been wearing this, as it's been on this NATO style strap, but it's actually a really nice exhibition window. Now, the Hamilton Caliber H30 features a day and date display, but I'm not a huge fan of the execution on this dial. So as you can see, we have a very small cutout off center on the right hand side where the day and date are featured. So you have white wheels with black text on those dials, and I'm just not an overall fan of how it interrupts the hour scale in the center there, and just how awkwardly placed it is on this gorgeous dial face. I really wish that these larger 46mm models were a time-only variant of the piece. I don't think, with its classic styling, it needs the day and date window. If it's supposed to harken back to a time where Fliegers or aviator watches were much larger in scale and practical in that sense, going with the day and date window was just a bad call. It doesn't look good on the watch. It does detract from how elegant this dial face would otherwise look. It would have been really nice if they maintained the day and date setting of the 42mm version, where you have either or at the 6 and 12 o'clock instead. And I'm sure if they could have maintained that style choice, they would have here, but you can see that this movement is clearly too small for the case, and they're just going with the day and date wheel as is. And that's why it rests so near the center, or what looks near the center of the watch, because the movement itself is seated in a very small area of just the center of this huge watch. Again, it would have looked so much nicer excluding the day and date window. Now, aside from all those bad notes, I actually have a lot of great things to say about this watch, and why don't we start with the dial? Oh boy, that dial configuration. This is one of the smartest dials I've ever seen, and very rarely do you see a design marry the hands with the dial design itself. It all feels like a singular design and concept. Oftentimes you'll find timepieces that have hands that they either thought looked pretty or were traditional, syringe and or cathedral hands or Mercedes hands plopped on any old dial face to make it look interesting. Whereas instead, Hamilton here developed a handset that worked in tandem with the dial's design. And you can see what I'm talking about. As that hour hand passes over and between hours, it frames the hour that's coming up. And the minute hand illuminates with the Loom plot at the end what minute it is precisely when that minute strikes. It is so well conceived. Honestly, of all the watches I've owned, this is one of the smartest dials I've seen. And it's one of the reasons I wanted the 42mm version so much, because I really enjoy its concept and design. It's extremely aesthetically pleasing in that it's so practical and utilitarian. It's one of the better tool watches out there for looks, in my opinion, at least regarding the dial face. Oh, and did I mention 20 bars water resistance? Guys, that's more than you should ever ask of your Flieger or a pilot's watch, aviator watch. They went with so many words to describe what this is on their website, but it is a pilot aviator. 20 bar water resistant is great. If you're getting the larger version, if you want to be a member of the Big Watch Club, or if you already are and enjoy big watches, you're going to get that out of your pilot's watch. That's awesome. And aside from having one of the smartest dials on the market, you have one of the prettiest dials as well. And I believe there's 3 configurations now. But as we take in this, I want to say it's like a graphite gray, because it looks a deep black. But when you're really looking at it, you'll notice that it has a gray sunray finish. And then you have these hour markings, I guess I should say minute markings, that run around the track. You have the big triangle at 12 and 5:10 all the way up to 55 running around the outside of the dial. And the way they are cut allows them to catch and pick up light in even the darkest of situations, making it extremely legible even in dark surroundings. Now, the Loom is nothing to write home about. There is Loom on the minute tracks that surround the outside of the dial face, and Loom on the hands. It's not that great. It's actually rather difficult to pick up. It's not going to compare to your diver. Although the depth this watch can go might, the Loom certainly won't. I'm going to try to post some good Loom shots of this timepiece over on Instagram. I like to post images of watches I'm reviewing there, as well as timepieces that I don't feature on the show. There's a lot of stuff I buy that I don't show you guys because it's not immediately relevant or worthy of being reviewed, in my opinion. But I'll take pictures and put them up on Instagram. So if you have an Instagram and want to check out Loom shots of this and or timepieces I just get in, check it out. Now, the case design of this timepiece is another big positive note in regards to this watch. I absolutely love how it was executed. It's not overly ornate. You have these sort of mustachio style lugs that swoop down from the sides, and you can see there's a very beautiful, delicate curve, although very exaggerated, and it's only highlighted by those beveled edges. And of course, as this watch is so big, those minor features seem very prominent, and stylistically, I quite enjoy them. Again, you have really great high quality brushstrokes on the sides, and those high polish bits are polished to perfection. So good job on the detailing of this case. I think it was handled extremely well. Now, again, if not for John, I likely would have never looked at one of these watches, and I can honestly say, sub $400, I would totally consider getting one. This is an awesome timepiece. It's probably the favorite amongst the watches he lent to me. And that's a shock to say because, again, I never thought I would want to be a member of the Big Watch Club. And, this isn't even as big as watches go, but 46 is a lot for me. So the fact that I can enjoy this is pretty crazy. Now, before I leave you, I want to provide you with a wrist shot to give you a better sense of what the Hamilton Khaki Aviation Pilot will look like on your wrist. Now, here's what the Hamilton Khaki Aviation Pilot will look like for all of your admirers. And when you are going to admire it, it's going to look a little something like this. And of course, I have my Hamilton paired with a Toxic NATO, and I know that electric blue isn't going to fly with everyone, but on the Hamilton Khaki Aviation Pilot, I think it does a really good job. It certainly does the trick for me. I think it's extremely aesthetically pleasing on a nylon strap, as well as that bracelet it comes with. And of course, there are 3 dial face options, and I'll leave you guys a link to the Hamilton website so you can check them out. They also come with variations of straps, so you can get a leather strap and or the bracelet on it instead. And the thinness of the watch isn't apparent until you actually wear it. I love the fact that it's only 12.5 millimeters thick. That's actually a great deal thinner than you'd anticipate for a watch this scale, and I think that's why it wears so favorably on my 7 1/4 inch wrist. I actually quite like it. Honestly, gang, if you are into bigger watches, Hamilton crushed it with this model. This is one of their nicer offerings, and I have to say, Hamilton's doing a really good job of shaping up their current collection. They've just cranked out a whole array of really awesome timepieces, and this is an awesome one in their lineup, so do check it out if you're interested in getting a bigger watch. I'm surprised I'm saying that, but I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. Yeah, John, good job with this one. If you're looking for a modern aviation style timepiece with a dependable movement and good case components, I don't think this one's going to fail you. Now, this goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the Hamilton Khaki Aviation Pilot, feel free to leave those down in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to respond to those immediately. And if you found this video informative or in the least entertaining, feel free to hit that like button. It looks a whole lot like this guy. If you have friends, forums, or groups that were interested in pilot watches, aviation pilot watches, well then maybe send them this video. I know larger watches are daunting for a lot of us, especially if you have a smaller wrist. I think it's 7 1/4. This guy wears very well, so if you have a friend who has a wrist that size, this might be a great alternative for them. And if you are new to Take Time, congratulations on finding us. You are an honorary member. If you'd like to officiate your membership, you can do so by hitting the subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, this goes for everyone, you can hit that bell icon to see my videos precisely when they come out. Again, my name is Patrick Marlatt, and thank you for the time.